My name is Dave Lopez. I get to serve as one of the pastors at Cornerstone Miami Church. Mental health in the church matters because this is how disciples are made, it's how disciples are grown, it's how disciples are redeemed. It's how God takes the broken things in your life and in mine and how he makes them new. The scripture says that we have been called to renew our minds. Before anything else happens in this world, it all starts in this place, family. So listen, mental health matters in the church because this is where God does his best work in you and in me. And it's how he changes not just my mind, but our hearts and the way we live in this place. So we apply mental health in a couple of different ways. So we've got a couple of simple early steps where we offer and prayer for everybody about anything. Oftentimes though, when we see different or difficult types of challenges that pop up that maybe some of our church family isn't equipped for, we provide an initial assessment, maybe like that first off counseling that maybe I or one of the other elders might do. And then after that, listen, anything that is beyond our ability or something that just requires a lot more attention, our go-to partners are Wellspring. Here in South Florida and in Miami, these are the men and women that we believe God has placed in this town that we trust with the people of our church to be able to pray for and to serve them well, both mentally, emotionally, and psychosocially. So as you guys are watching and considering Give Miami Day, let me invite you to consider Wellspring. They are doing so much good for the glory of God and for the good of our city. They are doing things that people will never know about. And chances are you've run into someone who has experienced the pain or difficulty of something wrong happening in our minds or in our hearts. People like Wellspring are there to stand in the gap to do and fix those things that we're not gifted or we haven't been equipped to do. These are the unsung heroes that are doing the heavy lifting when no one's watching. So as you consider Give Miami Day, then let me encourage you to invest into Wellspring as a place that's glorifying God and it's for the good of our city.
My name is Steve Olson and I'm director of the community ministry at the First Baptist Church of Isla Mirada. We're a ministry that serves those that are homeless and those that are struggling to get by in life with providing basic services. We have a food pantry, we have a clothing closet, and each week we see more than 100 families come visit us to get supplements for helping them to feed their families. Things have gotten so expensive recently that many are having trouble feeding their families, and with the help of our pantry and our clothing closet, we've been able to serve many in the community. One of the things that we have added as a service based on a better understanding of the needs of the people that we serve every week is emotional counseling. Emotional trauma is affecting so many people, and it's really inhibited their ability to live a fruitful and productive and joyful life. And so with the help of the Ocean Reef Community Foundation and our partnership with Wellspring, we've been able to serve many people who otherwise would not be able to have these kind of counseling services, allow them to address some of the traumas in life that have really damaged them emotionally and really allowed them to get back on a positive path, a path that leads them to a more joyful and productive life. So we just want to thank Wellspring and the Ocean Reef Community Foundation for your support. The financial resources that you've provided allow us to provide free counseling to our population, which many would never be able to see these kinds of services and really make a huge difference. So thank you for all that you've done to help us.
Hey, this is Pastor Kevin, and I serve as lead pastor here at the Miami Vineyard Church. I'm here to share a few words with you about mental health and the priority of mental health. And even though we may not find those words in the Bible, mental health, you can read from cover to cover the high value God places on this. First of all, God placed a high value on us as human beings, concerned about our mind, body, soul, and spirit. And you can also read in the Bible what the Bible has to say about our thoughts and our minds. We read that we should take every thought captive and make it obedient to Christ. We read about anxiety. We read about worry. Jesus talked about this. He talked about stress levels and these kinds of things. And all of this is so important to mental health. In fact, it's so important that just a few months ago, we did a series here at our church on the weekend, a 5-part series called Winning the War Zone. It was a series dedicated to mental health. I believe that mental health is hugely important in the church, and that we as leaders and pastors in the church need to continue to address this issue. Because God has given us a responsibility to shepherd and to pastor and lead healthy sheep and healthy people.
My name is Pastor Ruben Velasco with Kendall United Methodist Church in the city of Pinecrest. We in the church don't speak about mental health enough. There's a certain stigma. We make people feel sometimes that maybe they don't pray enough, or maybe they're not religious enough, or they don't have enough faith, and that if they only had those things, that they would be better mentally. But we've learned that mental health invokes so many other things. Our spiritual well-being, our physical, and our mental well-being is very important. And for a lot of people, they're ashamed if they do realize that they have issues, with mental health issues, or family members that do. They're ashamed to bring it up to their pastor or to their folks in their church. I believe just like our physical health. When I'm sick, when I have a problem physically, I turn to my doctor for help. I think that it's important when we have problems mentally, or when we have issues, that we turn to somebody that's been trained in that field. So we can talk about it in the pulpit, kind of talk about it in our Bible studies, in our small groups, let people know that there are resources out there. I refer them to Wellspring. That's one of the resources that I'm able to give to our members of our church, as somebody that we trust, and we've sent actually members of our church there. For folks in my church, they know that I have been and gone through counseling, and I've explained to them what a benefit it was for my life. And so I think just speaking about it is very important. And I have found that as in our staff and with our members, it creates in them and created in me a more healthy attitude and a more healthy space for everybody. I guess I'm just grateful to walk along with Wellspring here in the South Miami area, and to have such great friends in the agency. And to know that I can send somebody, and I trust that whoever I send will get the top kind of quality care.
My name is Alex Trinchet. I'm a lieutenant with Miami-Dade Fire Rescue. I've seen mental health as a very important aspects of it, whether it's in my role as chaplaincy, or my role in teaching, or my role in just helping individuals in crisis. The way I see it, we're body, mind, and soul. So whatever affects our mind starts to affect our body. Whatever affects our body starts affecting our mind. So mental health is very important, to the community, to first responders, especially to first responders, because mental health is also mental strength, the ability to fight fires, the ability to help people in our community. So as mentally strong, first responders are, the better, they are capable, or we are capable in helping the community. So mental health is mental strength to be able to do the job that the community has called us to do. Our average day at work is helping people having their worst day of their life. So it's a stressful job. So in time, it starts to affect the body, it starts affecting the mind, it starts affecting the soul. So Wellsprings has been essential in helping me to help, my coworkers, help, in my role as a chaplain, to be able to help people, especially long term, by the resources that Wellsprings provide, therapy, EMDR, the Bounce program. Technically, Wellsprings is a complete service, whether it's individuals, couples, children, advanced therapy like EMDR. So partnering up with Wellsprings has been essential, like us partnering up with any community partner to be able to help not only the community, but also first responders as well. I want to encourage everybody to support Wellsprings, as Wellsprings has supported the community and supported many first responders. This is our time to be able to support them.
I have been the pastor here at Oak Cutler for almost 5 years. And one of the first people that set up a meeting with me to tell me about the ministry at this church was Tova Krebs. And Tova shared with me just the positive, good things that Wellspring is doing. And we talked about ways that Oak Cutler and Wellspring could continue to have an effective ministry and relationship together. I think that the issue of mental health is important and important for a pastor and for the church to take seriously. Because it's real, and therefore we're constantly confronted with it, and to pretend within within the church, within Christian circles, that we're not dealing with people who have mental illness is a horrific mistake. You know, as a pastor, I do a good bit of counseling myself, and so I'll do pastoral counseling, biblical counseling, but occasionally I will run into situations where it goes beyond any of my ability or training. And so I'll send people, refer people to Wellspring. And we have had many of our folks at the church who have gone to, and they're referred to go to Wellspring. And what we have seen over the time that they've been with them, working with therapists, is real improvement in their lives as they've dealt with whatever those problems may have been that they needed to address. And so we're very thankful for the kind of input that these highly trained therapists have had with our people. One of the things that has impressed me about Wellspring deals with the quality of the therapists that are there and the ways that they have been trained and the things that they know. And so there are men and women at Wellspring who are incredibly competent and capable in terms of their understanding of psychology and mental health and being able to engage in a lot of therapeutic practices to help people. But they're also, at the same time, people who are committed to Christ, who are committed to the Word of God, and understand what it looks like to bring those things together in a way that's most helpful to people where they are.
My name is Johanna Ralston Cox, and I am the Ministries Director at Miami Youth for Christ. So we are a ministry that works to reach out to kids who are not being reached by the local church. So we're going to schools, detention centers, community, low-income communities, and we're reaching out to youth there with the hope of Jesus, both in word and in deed. And so I get to sit and look at all of our over 20 ministry sites and make sure that our staff and volunteers have the resources they need to reach kids with the gospel. Someone said to us a long time ago that your ministry will only be as healthy as you are. And so I think that's a huge part of it for us, is that first, just as ministers of the gospel, whether that's a paid position or not, because we believe at Miami Youth for Christ that everyone who says they're a follower of Jesus is a minister of the gospel, that we cannot expect to have healthy ministry if we're not taking care of ourselves spiritually, mentally, emotionally, physically. And so that's a really high priority for us with anyone that's part of our team. So we bring in Wellspring staff to train our staff as often as we can, and volunteers when we can include them, because that gives us the tools both to better address the needs of students, and I think also to recognize our limits. You know, I think sometimes, we can feel like as a minister, as a volunteer, even and now as a parent, for me, like I can feel like, I have to solve this problem. And Wellspring really helps our staff to identify where the line is between, yes, you can help with this, and no, this is something that this person is going to need some professional help. And when that's the case, we're going to refer the student to mental health services. And so we've just realized that if we come to a student who's dealing with a mental health crisis, one, that could be an amazing opportunity for ministry to them, to show them, hey, Jesus cares about this. And so we're going to care about it too. When I started with Miami Youth for Christ, I was a volunteer. And then when I came on staff, I was running a ministry site in West Homestead. So I was working with middle school and high school students. And one of the first collaborations I got invited into with Wellspring Counseling was their bounce camp for kids who face trauma. And this was huge because just being in a low income community, there was a lot of trauma that our kids were facing. And I could see, as a kid who grew up in a much different setting and with a lot less trauma, I could see how it was affecting the kids, but I had no idea how to help them kind of move past it. And so not only was it extremely helpful to get the kids plugged into that, because we just saw kids make leaps and bounds of improvement once they got engaged with bounce camp. For the first 2 or 3 years that we would send kids to bounce camp, and on scholarship too, because these kids and their parents could not afford to go to a camp for a week to address trauma and have powerful therapy. And so I remember the first couple of years we just sent girls because we could only get girls to do it. And then one of our staff, his cousin had lost his mom when he was really young. And so, when he was 8 or 9 years old. And so he was now 15 or 16. And so we got him to agree to go. And he had such a good time and such a powerful experience. that he like became our ambassador for Bounce Camp. And so, because we had a lot of boys that needed trauma therapy, but you tell a boy they need therapy, they're like, nah. So we would send them to this kid and we would say, go talk to him. And he would tell them all, you got to do it. It's really good. And so after that, we started sending about half girls and half boys to camp. And we would have volunteers and young alumni help get them to the facility every day during Bounce Camp. But that was just such a beautiful collaboration. So from there, I did a listening training that was super powerful. And so I got my staff involved in that. We brought Wellspring to our site to do some in-house group therapy with kids, which was also very powerful. So that one other way we partner is by having staff go to Wellspring counseling when they need additional help. And I personally have been a beneficiary of that. So that's been how we partnered with Wellspring. And it's always been a blessing. I can't think of a time that we've partnered with Wellspring and thought, well, that wasn't that great. So it's always been, how can we do it more?
I'm Rob, Associate Pastor, Sheepdog at New Life Community Church. The big issue is that we don't think that there's an issue. The great law, Deuteronomy 6:4, is, Hear, O Israel, the Lord is your God, and the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord God with all of your heart, all of your mind, all of your soul. And then our rabbi taught us, and you shall love your neighbor as yourself. So if you don't like yourself, or if your self is kind of wonky, everything flows out of that spring. So if we're going to follow what actually Jesus taught, is that first you begin with yourself. Because if I get semi-normal, then I can treat you semi-normal. And when they work through the big stuff, even the small stuff, they have better families, and then they're actually able to come to church to actually worship. They're not shamed. They're not ashamed to be there. Their voice is when we sing, their voice is louder. They've got something to say, something to share. So yeah, it makes the community, for us, it makes the community better, the church better. But for them, it makes their families better. I refer people to Wellspring because it's way out of my league. And you have to know your limitations. And also, for some of the folks that come out of the occult, or some of the folks that have been sexually wounded and things like that, it's better with a one-on-one private, because they can leave their stuff here and then they can return back to the body without being shamed. And that is a huge, huge issue. So I can send them here and know that I'm going to get them back and they're going to be better, which is, yay, makes my job easier. Yeah.
Mental health is important in the church because as God made us, He made us not only to be spiritual beings, but He made us to have a physical body and to have a mental health life. So we really have to be aware of how God made us to think and how our brain works, and those things that happen to us that maybe don't affect us physically or spiritually, but they affect us mentally, and it's such an important part of our life as a child of God. We know that as we look at church history, that mental health has been something that maybe has been pushed aside or considered unspiritual, something that the church failed to address. I think that we're coming to a time now where mental health is something that's on the forefront of the church's mind. I think of our church in particular, and how we encourage members of our church to seek mental health care. We live in a society that's not perfect. We live in a world that's not perfect. And so there are things that happen to us that we need somebody to process them with, somebody that's going to ask us questions and really dig from that well of life experience so that we can reflect on the things that have happened to us. As a church, at Christ Fellowship, we have gone as far as to create a partnership with Wellspring to provide mental health care for our church members and for our staff, pastors and lay leaders. Because we know that when somebody is, mentally suffering or fatigued or just not in a right mindset, that it's going to affect their spiritual life, their physical life, their relational life. There's such a healthy thing about a pastor or somebody who is in ministry, who cares for others all the time. There's something very healthy about us seeking out mental health for ourselves, right? For us seeking out counseling. I myself, I've been through, the adult version of Bounce, which is a trauma therapy program. It's called Restore, and I was able to dig through things that I didn't even know I was dealing with from my childhood. And if you maybe find yourself in a position where you're thinking, I don't need help, I don't have anything crazy going on, I feel fine, there's still fatigue or burnout that happens that you may not be aware of until it's too late. So why go through that when you can be proactive about your mental health, unpack the things that have happened in your life, and really be equipped with what you need to know in order to not be burned out. There's so many strategies that I've learned through Wellspring and through receiving counseling myself as a pastor that have made me a better pastor, a better husband, a better father, and just a healthier, I think the right word is healthy, a healthier individual.
Hi everyone, my name is Dr. Mark McGowan. I'm one of the therapists at Wellspring Counseling, and I'm here to talk a little bit about compassion and compassion fatigue. But let me first talk about compassion, which is a good thing. And when you look at scripture, it's used 68 times. One example is in Colossians chapter 3, verse 12, where we're told to clothe ourselves with compassion. So for example, nurses, teachers, pastors, missionaries have given their lives to working with others. And we feel good about it. So we talk about compassion satisfaction. And that's the enjoyment and the gratification that we have when we do our work, when we help others who are going through distress. But we also have to acknowledge that at some point, we get tired, we get fatigued. Jesus had to retire himself occasionally from other people. And so we might get the effects of what we call compassion fatigue. And compassion fatigue consists of two things. One is burnout, which is the feeling of hopelessness and challenge or difficulty in dealing with our work and doing it effectively. It can also bring about compassion, secondary traumatic stress. That's the secondary exposure to extremely or traumatically stressful events that people may be sharing with us. So again, compassion fatigue has two elements. One is burnout, and the other one is secondary traumatic stress. There are ways of assessing that, and I encourage you to first understand how it is happening in your own life. And there is a tool that's available that will be shared with you called the ProQual, which stands for the Professional Quality of Life, which will assess your level of compassion satisfaction and also your level of compassion fatigue. And I encourage you to take it just like you would do your thermometer to determine your temperature. You take your blood pressure over time and determine whether you're at the point where you maybe to take a little bit of a breather. There's a good tool called a Provider Resilience app. And in that, actually, there is the tool that I just mentioned, the ProQual, but also have some tools about managing stress. If the usual methods that you use to manage your own stress, your feelings of burnout don't work, then you might want to try the Provider Resilience app. For some of us, they may come readily to mind. It may be working out, maybe doing art, maybe writing poetry. It may be finding a place of relaxation. And the background I have behind me, for some people also that has some benefits in calming. Some people call this forest bathing. Now, I'm not actually in a woods, but some of you have access to woods, and there's actually the concept of forest bathing. So taking walks in the wood, getting closer to the solitude that may exist in the environment of nature can be very helpful to some people. For others, none of that seems to help. And if that's the case, then it's very important for you to reach out. This time of your life where you're exercising so much compassion for others beyond the ability for you to normally cope, it's a time to reach out. And so Wellspring is available to help you. And again, I would encourage you to complete the ProQual to get a sense of where you are. But I really want to thank you for your compassion and all your work for others, regardless of your profession. It's showing a real understanding of your gifts and talents and that you're giving to others, but also realizing that that work can sometimes give us fatigue, and there's times to reach out for it. So again, I want to thank you for your compassion, and reach out when you need it.